Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Mike Fraley, who is running for sheriff of Carter County, Tennessee in 2022. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon.
Glad to have you with me today. It's a beautiful day.
It's gorgeous out here.
Yeah. So tell us all about you. What's your background, and let people know basically who you are.
Well, again, my name is Mike Fraley. I worked at the Carter County Sheriff's Office for almost 31 years. I retired in January of 2021 after 31 years service. I'm still working at Walter State Community College as an instructor at the Police Academy. I teach firearms, verbal de-escalation, off-duty considerations, and some other courses. But I'm enjoying retirement, but I feel like I left something on the table. And after some encouragement from some friends and some other people, I have made the decision to seek the office of Sheriff of Carter County.
Okay. Now, why you? I mean, there's a lot of people that could do that or could try to do that. Why do you think you're the best person for that job?
Well, the reason I think that I'm the best candidate, I've served under 5 administrations. That was 5 different mindsets. I started in 1989 under then Sheriff Bill Crumley, and I retired under the current Sheriff, Dexter Lunsford. But every sheriff I served under had good ideas, and they had some ideas that weren't so good. But I think I bring experience to the table. I think I bring understanding. I know the county well. My father is a retired city police officer for Elizabethton. He worked for Elizabethton for 36 years. And my younger brother is a TBI agent, and he has served for over 20 years with the TBI.
Yeah. So you've had over 30 years experience then?
Yes, sir.
What do you think is the most valuable lesson you've learned in that 30 years?
I learned a lot of valuable lessons, but I guess the best lesson I learned is just how to treat people. And actually over 3 decades, my mindset changed, because when I was a younger officer, fresh out of the academy, my attitude was just put everybody in jail that was doing wrong. And I learned to develop empathy and compassion. And one of my defining moments was towards the end of my career. I was asked to sit on the drug court in its beginning, and I saw a great program get even better, and found out that compassion goes a long way. And not everybody needs to be put in jail and throw away the key. Now, if you do wrong, I have no problem with that. But I think people need to be shown that with help, and they need to help themselves too, or it won't work. Yeah. But there are good programs out there that will help people.
Do you think the Carter County Sheriff's Department overall has a good image?
I think overall they have a good image. There's a lot of good people there. I have worked with some of the finest that have ever walked the streets, and they're extended family.
Yeah. Is there a racial problem in Carter County?
I don't think so. I really don't.
Okay. What percentage of Sheriff's Office employees are Black? Do you know that?
Well, the population of Carter County has a lot to do with that. There are African-American officers there, a couple that I know of. One on patrol and one is a school resource officer.
Yeah. Do you plan on changing that in any way?
I'm going to review every application that comes through, and I'm going to look for the best person for the job. Yeah. I look at character.
Yeah. Do you believe the systematic racism is a real thing?
That's a little bit of a tough question, but I will answer it to the best of my ability. Yes, I think that there are problems with systematic racism in this country. We have a lot of problems nationwide with racism. And my answer to that is I will sit down and talk to anybody. I may not agree with your views. You may not agree with mine. But I'll say this, I'll be willing to sit down and listen. And we will try to come to an understanding. And again, we may not agree, but hopefully we can shake hands at the end of the discussion and have a better understanding of one another.
Yeah. Do you think white privilege is a real thing?
I wouldn't know that. My grandfather moved here in 1934. He worked up until he was 88 years old, and he never got rich. My father never got rich, and I certainly haven't gotten rich. So I can't, I just don't understand the white privilege thing because I've worked since I was 5 years old. I was on the back of my grandfather's moving truck, sometimes working for 50 cents a day. And that was just a little bit that he had left over from when he billed somebody for moving furniture for them.
Yeah. Last summer, there was a big bunch of ha-ha about the covered bridge thing, protesters there and all. I'm sure you remember that. What's your thoughts on that?
I was actually retired when that happened. I don't know I wasn't there. I don't know. So I can't honestly answer that one because I wasn't there.
Yeah. Do you think people have a right to protest peacefully?
Yes, sir, I do. Everybody, I mean, this is a free country and you have a right to express your opinion, but you need to do it legally. And you also need to consider the rights of other people when you're doing that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you think the law officers in East Tennessee basically get enough respect?
In this area, I think that officers could always get more respect. Don't get me wrong, after serving there for 30 some years, but overall, I think the majority of the people in this area, this region, do respect police officers. I had a gentleman give me a little card the other day. It said, we need your help, officers. And I told him I was retired, but he knew me and said, you're always going to be an officer in my mind. And it just made my day. But
Yeah.
it really did make my day by somebody handing me that little card.
Yeah. What do you think about all this business about defunding the police?
I don't agree with defunding the police. I think that we need more officers out on the streets. And I'm glad you brought that up because one of my points, if I'm elected sheriff, I'm going to put more officers out there on the streets. A little statistic that you may not know, when I started at the sheriff's department in 1989, there were 4 patrol officers per shift. Now in 2021, there are still 4 road officers per shift. Also, when I started in 1989, there were 43 employees. Now there's around between 130 and 140 employees. And that being said, I'm going to streamline job duties, and my goal is to eventually double the amount of patrol officers. And I can't do it from day one, but there will be an increase from day one. And my ultimate goal is to at least double what's out there on the streets.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone that's considering a career in law enforcement?
Well, I get to do that actually tomorrow because I start at the academy at 5 a.m. in the morning. It is a rewarding career, and it's what you make of it. You can sit in a patrol car and do nothing, or you can get out and engage in the community, which is what more officers need to do. And I'm so thankful I grew up in an era of pre-cell phones. I'll talk to anybody, anytime. And these officers, they need to know to get out and interact with the community. That's the number one priority that I have.
You think it's a problem when people take their cell phones and make videos of police officers talking to people or arresting people? Do you think that's a bad thing?
It can be when officers are being baited to try to say something. And it's like I tell the cadets at the academy, you need to keep your head on a swivel and always be mindful. And that has a lot to do with character. That's who you are when people aren't watching. You always need to approach it that way, that somebody's always watching you. And if you do that and treat it with that mindset, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Do Do you think we need body cameras on the police in this area?
There were actually body cameras issued to part of the school resource officers prior to my retiring. I have no problem with body cameras. It's like I said, if you do your job, you shouldn't have to worry about a body camera. I would encourage it.
I agree. Unless you're doing something wrong, I don't understand why anybody would be against it. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I totally agree with that.
Is human trafficking a big problem in Carter County, sir?
There is a problem in the region with human trafficking. There was a case a couple years ago which led to a human trafficking charges between Hampton and Roan Mountain. Is it rampant? I don't think so, but I think that there's a problem nationwide with that. Matter of fact, the last class I sat in on a human trafficking course that was being taught by the TBI at the academy, and there's a lot of good things that officers need to just look for that may develop into a larger case that they may be overlooking when they're out there answering these calls.
Yeah. Do people that have been the victims of sexual assault, do they get treated correctly, do you think, by law officers generally? I know a lot of women say they're afraid to report.
I think a lot of victims are afraid to report. I worked as an investigator for about 4 years, and I worked child sex abuse cases. It was very trying on me, and I know I'm speaking about child sex abuse, and you're talking about a different type of sexual abuse, but there's a lot that do go unreported.
Yeah. I think I read somewhere recently only about 1/4 are reported. And that's a sad reality.
I would agree with that. I didn't. Could you repeat that again? I couldn't hear you really good.
I read somewhere recently where only about 1/4 of sexual assaults are actually reported.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And that's sad.
Yes, it is.
How are things going at the new jail? I mean, I know they had a lot of problems at first. Are they doing okay now?
Well, they're extremely understaffed. I will say that. I think there's about between a 70 and 80% turnover in the jail, and that's troubling because you have good people that are there that are being worked literally to death 7 days a week just to do their jobs, and that's a problem that really needs to be looked at closely.
Is that related to them being underpaid, or is it something else?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think it has everything to do with pay. I never got rich at the sheriff's department. There were times that I could have went other places and I didn't. I weathered the storm. I stayed there for 31 years. I think it's a combination of things. Yes, I would love to see every officer make more money, but I also think that there's a leadership issue, and it's a matter of showing people that you care about them, putting your arm around them, telling them that they're doing a good job when they are. And when they mess up, take them behind closed doors and fix the problem and make sure it doesn't happen again. Praise in public and punish in private.
There you go. Do you think the religion or spirituality of a sheriff should be taken into consideration by voters?
I think that everything should be taken into consideration. I mentioned character earlier. I am proud that I worked there for 31 years and I had a clean record. Again, I've mentioned it before. My father taught me a lot. He worked there for 36 years at the police department and is still held in a high regard by the community. Everybody, everywhere I go, asks about how Dad's doing. Yeah. And my brother being a TBI agent, we're a family of law enforcement, I'll put it that way. And, Carter County is not a very big county. It seems like everywhere I go, people are asking me how retirement is and how the sheriff's race is going, things like that. But character has a lot to do with it. And I think everything should be taken into consideration before you go to the polls. And elect the sheriff of Carter County.
Yeah. Do you think the Carter County Sheriff's Department works well with Elizabethton Police Department? And would you change anything about that relationship?
I think that they have a pretty good relationship with one another. Any relationship with any department can always be better. And I think that region-wise, and I'll take it outside of Elizabethton, I think training is very important this day and time. And I think all the sheriffs and police chiefs need to sit down together, and everybody brings good ideas to the table, and have a solid training program for officers and make it for everybody to attend.
Yeah. Is the county getting enough funding from the state?
The county getting funding from the state.
Yeah.
There are grants out there to apply for. I will have a grant writer that will write for grants, and I will operate within a budget. Whatever's given to me, I will find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
If I sign a contract, it will be honored, and that's across the board. I will not enter into any agreement without being able to fulfill it.
What do you think is the biggest myth about law enforcement?
I think a lot of people watch too much TV, that it's all excitement,
Yeah.
The car chases and all that. It's not that way. There are moments of excitement, but there are a lot of moments of boredom.
Yeah.
But it all comes together. I will say this, you need to be very cautious in doing your job and not get too lackadaisical, because in 1994, I got shot. And I actually made a mistake, and I'm still paying for it to this day. And I think that's why the good Lord left me here, was to teach younger officers not to make mistakes that I made.
Yeah. So besides the fact that it's kind of a family tradition for you and your family, what else inspired you to be an officer of the law?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Growing up with a dad as a police officer, I really didn't want to be a police officer. My first goal, I wanted to be an architect. And my goal was to join the Army, get the GI Bill, and go to college. It didn't work out that way. When I was working in Mooresville, North Carolina at a restaurant, there were two police officers that would come in the evening, and they actually brought it up to me that I ought to give law enforcement a try. I watched them, and I had watched my dad, and I ultimately made the decision I am going to give it a try.
Yeah. Have you ever regretted it?
Not one day.
Well, that's good. So what do you think of the present sheriff of Carter County?
Well, I have known Dexter Lunsford since the beginning of my career. He was a state trooper when I started. He has an extensive background. He started out at the sheriff's department probably when I was still in high school. But he's a good man. I have nothing negative to say about the current sheriff.
Is there one big mistake you think he has made as a sheriff?
I'm not going to second guess anything he's done. I retired, and I went out with my head held high. There are things that I would do different, and I would tell him, if he were sitting across from me right now. That doesn't mean he's a bad person. That doesn't mean he's a bad sheriff. There's just things that I will do different if I'm elected sheriff.
Yeah.
Number one, changing the mindset. And there's a mindset now of that's not my job. And the mindset needs to shift to how can I help you? And that starts at the top. That would start with me if I'm elected sheriff, all the way through the ranks.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So you mentioned you would double the amount of officers on the street. Do you think that Carter County is not being protected adequately now?
I think you could always use more patrol officers out on the streets. And even Steve saying this, even doubling it may not be enough. But I will say this, I'm going to operate within a budget that's given to me by the county commission. And it will not cost the taxpayers any more money, because I've heard people say, you can't double it without costing more money. Well, yes, actually I can, because I'm going to streamline job duties. And I can tell you this, there's 4 and 5 people doing what one person used to do. I'm going to go by line and look at each job title, and I'm going to restructure how that works.
How many calls does a sheriff's department get each day? Do you know?
When I started, the average was about 14,000 calls a year. And again, we had 43 total employees at the sheriff's department. Now that number has more than doubled.
Yeah.
2 years ago, the number was over 28,000. I'm sure that the number's over 30,000 by now, but that's a lot of calls in a year's time.
Yeah. And what percentage of those calls actually lead to an arrest?
I would say a very, very small percentage would lead to an actual arrest. Out of 30,000 calls, I would say probably a couple hundred arrests, because there's so many calls for service that doesn't require an arrest being made.
Yeah. Do you think some of those calls should be allocated to maybe social services or something like that?
I think a call for service is a call for service, because I think that as a sheriff's department employee, you're there to serve the public. And I think whether it being helping a stranded motorist, a lost person in the neighborhood, I think that's why I want more officers in the neighborhood that can be proactive and being out there and helping people.
Yeah. Have you experienced any kind of negative comments about you running? Is there anybody that's really adamantly opposed to you running for sheriff?
There's going to be people negative no matter what you do. I've heard comments that all I ever did was get shot. I'm sorry, I did a lot more than that. I walked out of there with my head held high. I was a officer of the year in 1994. I'm a lifetime member of the Training Officers Network, and I'm still active with them. I don't regret anything that I've done, but the ones that want to be negative, all I can do is pray for them and wish them the best. I'm who I am. I make no bones about it, and I'll answer any questions you have. And I'll say that it may not be the answer you want to hear, but I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah. So what do you think your biggest challenge will be if you're elected sheriff?
The biggest challenge is the turnover rate right now. And that's got to get under control. And I plan on trying several different things to make it work. I've looked at several options, and I'm going to go with what's best to try to retain the good employees that are leaving there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you up front, I won't be able to keep everybody. I get that. There is a large turnover rate, and it's not only countywide, it's nationwide. Police officers are leaving in droves, and that goes for corrections also.
Yeah. Is it true that the suicide rate is a lot higher for officers of the law than the general public?
There is a high percentage, but they're not in the top 3 or 4 right now. That there are officers, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm on the Tennessee Public Safety Network, and what we do is there's a team that when there's a bad situation that happens, we try to help them get through that. And it actually helped me many years ago. And it's basically like being a counselor for that. And my number's out there for any officer that wants to call me that's going through a situation. If an officer doesn't want to talk to me personally, that feels like I may be too close to them, I can connect them to somebody that's been through a situation that is probably worse than what they're going through, just to show them that, there is help out there.
Yeah. I'm sure it is a very high stress job.
It is. You can see the background right now of the river. Fishing is a great stress reliever to me.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not catching any, which is, I'll catch one later, I promise you. But you've got to have an outlet. You just can't be married to the job 24/7. You got to have some way of having an outlet.
I imagine there's some times you just can't leave it all at the office, so you go home and probably dwell on things sometimes.
No, you mentioned the myths in law enforcement. You can't just turn that switch off. I mean, we're human. We make mistakes, and there's things that will that bother people. And I'll be the first to tell you, I've went home and not been able to sleep because of certain things happen, but that's normal for officers to go through that, and it's just working through those things.
Yeah.
But there are also very good days. Yeah. Went home and felt really good about something that happened that day.
Yeah. Now, is it true that most officers go through their whole career without having to shoot anybody?
There's a very small percentage of officers that have to use their weapon in the line of duty. And I tell the cadets towards the end of the careers or the academies that probably a third of them will experience a use of force that will require deadly force. A third of them may not, and some of them may, the only time they draw their weapons out is when they qualify for their departments.
Yeah.
And I wish I had a crystal ball and could see the future, but I tell everybody to train like it's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And keep yourselves alive.
Yeah. How many female officers are on the sheriff's department now, do you know?
There are several female officers in the department right now. I can't give you an exact number, but off the top of my head, I know that there's probably, at the very minimum, 6 to 8.
Yeah.
Patrol officers. And there's a lot more officers in the corrections department also.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to say that I haven't given you an opportunity to say?
First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to say what I had to say. And I want everybody to take this into consideration. I don't know who all is going to run for sheriff, but I will say this. I've spent 31 years at the Carter County Sheriff's Department. I retired. I'm still involved in law enforcement by teaching at the police academy. And I want everybody to take that into consideration when they go to the polls and decide who they want to be their sheriff, regardless if there's 3 of us or if there's 10 of us running. Weigh everything out and ask every candidate the questions that you want answered. My phone number, I have it posted on my Facebook page on the Elect Mike Fraley Sheriff. It may take me just a little while to get back to you, but I will answer your questions. But be prepared. It may not be what you want to hear, but I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah. Now, do you have a website?
I do. It's Elect Mike Fraley. I think that's how you get to it. Or you can go to Facebook, find my page, and it'll direct you to Elect Mike Fraley Sheriff.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have the credentials and the experience, so I wish you all the best. And I thank you for talking to me today.
Again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Well, anytime you feel like you need to get the word out, feel free to give me a holler, okay?
Yes, sir, I sure will.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day. And folks, thanks for tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel and feel free to share this video all over social media. And if you're in Carter County, Tennessee, this man would love to have you vote. Brother, I will let you go and good luck on that fishing.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too, sir.